Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for our tutorial. We're going to be making a Halloween craft bow today. I'm going to use 4 different ribbons and our easy bow maker, and you're going to want a piece of, I use fabric covered floral wire, and some scissors. Let's get started. I usually lay these out in the order I want to make them from bottom to top. So this is the order I'm going to do, so I'm going to grab this striped ribbon first. And you're going to want to take your fabric wire and place it down between these 2 larger pegs. And I usually have 1 wire going up, 1 wire going down. This is what we're going to use after to tie our bow. All right, so first you grab your bolt of ribbon, and we're going to make shorter tails probably. So I'm just going to go to the edge of the board. There will be like an 8-inch mark right here. And what you are going to do is you're going to want to slide the ribbons down in between the 2 larger pegs the same way you did the wire. And you're going to want to kind of like gather it while you're pushing it down. Kind of like this, like an accordion. So it's like just bunched really, really tight. The tighter you make the center of the bow, the better your bow is going to look. All right, so I measure out, I want an 8-inch tail. So this is where I'm going to slide it down. And as I slide down, I'm going to kind of just bunch up the ribbon. You know, it's kind of hard to see on the video, but that's what it's looking like. I'm going to push it all the way down to the bottom. And when I get to the bottom, I'm going to flip the side that is still attached to the roll, because this is going to be the inside of a loop. And so I flip it so that when I roll it back over, the right side is showing. So I want my tail is 8 inches, so I'm going to do this loop about 6 inches. There's a 6-inch mark on the other side. I measure my loop out to, and right here is where I'm again going to slide it right down on top of that last layer I put between the 2 pegs. And then I'm going to kind of bunch it again. And however big you make your loop on this side, you're going to want to make it the same size on this side. That's where this little ruler comes in handy. So again, I'm going to flip the side of the ribbon that's still attached to the roll. And I'm going to bring it out to the 6-inch mark, so it's the same size on both sides. I kind of use my finger as a guide. And I'm going to slide this down, bunch it up. And right here, I can kind of eyeball it and make sure the 2 loops are about the same size. If it is not exact, it is okay. Don't worry. So we are going to push that down, and I'm going to flip it again. We're going to do 2 loops on each side. So I'm going to flip it, and again, kind of use my finger as a guide. Slide this down in the peg. Bunch it up. So now you should have 2 loops on this side. Flip it over and make my last loop on this side. Slide it down and bunch it. And I usually kick a tail this way. So there's tails on opposite top and bottom of your bow. And then you have your 2 loops on each side. So I'm just going to trim the ribbon so I can get rid of this roll. And we're going to go right on to our next layer. So I'm going to do this purple spider web ribbon. Spider web ribbon. Say that fast. Okay, so for this one, I want my tail the same length, so the same 8 inches, but I'm going to leave it sticking up this opposite side of this tail. I don't want all the tails of my bow directly on top of each other. Drives me crazy. You might not care, but that's just the way I do it. So I'm going to measure out 8. I'm going to slide this directly on top, and I'm going to kick this tail up that direction. So you should have opposite ribbon tails on opposite sides. Okay, so we're going to do it the same way we just did the first layer. Turn that over, and I am going to make my loops just barely smaller than the first layer. And you just kind of eyeball it. So if you put your finger in, the stripes should just barely hang out a little bit farther than this web ribbon. So I'm going to slide that down, gather it. We're going to flip over the ribbon that is still attached to the roll. Do the same thing, measure it out a little bit smaller. Slide it in. And the more you do this, the easier it'll get. You'll get faster. I'm just trying to go a little bit slow so you guys can see. All right, flip it. And we're gonna measure it a little bit smaller. Gather it. And again, flip it. This bow holder comes in handy for anybody whose hands get really sore. Like when you're holding multiple ribbons for a bow, your hand will start to ache after a while. So this bow maker is amazing. All right, make sure those are about the same. Double check each side, and I want this tail going out this bottom end. So again, this tail and this tail, opposite sides. I'm just gonna trim the ribbon, and you'll cut your ends better at the end. I just kind of trim them just to get it out of the way. All right, I think I'm gonna do my striped ribbon next. I don't usually like using all the same width in a bow, so I usually try to use a couple, like a 4-inch and some 2.5 inch, and I usually try to have some awesome like 1.5-inch ribbons for the top 2 or 3 layers. All right, so we're gonna do the same thing. I want this tail to not be on the same side as this last layer we did. I'm just gonna make it so it's down here, just kind of like we did the first one. I do the tails the same length. And so I have this tail here. I'm gonna flip this ribbon, and again, we're gonna make this loop just slightly smaller than that last layer. Put it in, we're gonna twist the ribbon. And like I said, it doesn't have to be exact. I just kind of use my finger as a guide. Twist this one. What is awesome is when you find a good quality double-sided ribbon, then you don't have to worry about like flipping everything. All right, this one. And I'm gonna make this last tail go up this direction. So I'm gonna cut it and get this bolt out of the way. Halloween is one of my favorite holidays to decorate for. You can just be loud, crazy, wild, all these bright, glittery colors. Super fun. Okay, so for this last layer, we are gonna do this polka dot ribbon, and I am gonna do my tail up on this side over here, so it's kind of opposite. Put it in, flip this upside down. Now this top layer, I'm not gonna make it too much smaller. I usually kind of do, since these are thinner ribbons, I kind of do them the same length because I kind of spread them out every direction. I don't layer them perfectly on top of each other when I'm done with the bow. Flip it. All right. I'm gonna have the tail go down this direction. And now I am done with all of the ribbons that I wanted to add to this bow. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the fabric wire, and I'm gonna bring it up both sides, and I'm going to carefully tie a knot, and I'm gonna shimmy the knot down between the 2 pegs. Biggest mistake would be to accidentally tie your bow wire around the pegs, because then your bow's kind of stuck. So let me make sure, get the right side here. So I have both ends of my wire. I'm just gonna do a single knot, and as I tighten the knot, I'm making sure that it goes down between those 2 pegs. And when I do that, I'm gonna kind of push down on my ribbon also. That way I can kind of get it snug before I pull the bow off of here, so it doesn't flop and I don't lose my shape. All right, pushed it down really good. You're gonna wanna yank your ribbon off of the bow maker now. It slides off, and we'll just put the bow maker off to the side. So as you can see, the bow is very tall. We're gonna wanna like push all of the layers really tight together. Biggest thing to remember at this point is don't pull too tight to where you snap your wire. I'm gonna bring the wire to the back of the bow, and I'm gonna do a double knot to finish this off. And then I usually keep the wire attached so I can attach it onto a wreath or a swag or whatever I'm using this bow on. So now that I've tied it, kind of looks like a crazy mess. The biggest thing when bow making is fluffing. You fluff at the end, and don't panic if it's all smashed. You want to use good quality wired ribbon so you can fluff it right back up. Totally not a big deal. And I usually bring my ends, the tails, out like the top and bottom of the bow. I kind of twist everything around, fluff everything up, round out all the loops. If you want, you can add a little center ribbon covering where your wire is, but there's normally so much going on with these bows, and by the time you fluff it, you could barely even see the wire that's in there anyway, so I usually leave it. Just go through and fluff up all these layers. These bows work great for, like I said, wreaths and swags, but they also make awesome like gift bows if you have a wedding gift or a baby shower gift. I don't know, there's so many different ribbons you can buy now, and this bow is my go-to for just about everything. Fluff up all these ribbons. All right, after you get your loops fluffed and everything facing the right direction, you're gonna wanna trim your tails. For this step, I usually just remind people before you snip the tail, make sure you're not accidentally about to snip through a loop. Sucks when you do that. You'll just end up with a lot more tails to your bow. But I like the dovetail. So I fold the ribbon in half, I line up the edges, and I'm gonna cut at an angle like this to make a V. Now with beginners, the most common thing that I see people do is they fold their ribbon, but they cut it the wrong direction and it makes a point. If that happens, don't worry, just fold it again, start at the end and cut the other direction, and you're good. So you're gonna wanna do this to all of the tails of your bow. All right, so here is the finished product. After I fluffed it, trimmed all the edges, it's gonna be amazing. You can apply Fray Check to the ends so the edges won't fray. We sell that on our website. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to visit our website, www.shopdesignerdiy.com, for more tutorials and some awesome ribbon. Thanks, everyone.